Katie. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing sort of a release week wrap up for my latest book, The Marionettes, which just came out this month, August 24th. I guess it's not this month, it's now September. This came out August 24th of 2021. So it's been about a week. And I thought we would just wrap up, tell you how the release went. I had you guys send in some questions on Instagram, so I'm gonna answer those as well. To have a chat about the book, how everything's going, how I'm feeling. And then I'm also gonna do a cover reveal for the sequel, Wicked Souls, in this video, which is very exciting. I've been wanting to share this cover for a while. And now that book 2, Wicked Souls, is up for pre-order, you can pre-order the ebook as well as the paperback. I thought might as well do the cover reveal officially. We'll start with the wrap up of book 1, and then I also have a couple of other announcements relating to this series. I've made like 5 pages worth of notes here to try and keep myself organized because we have a lot to talk about. I'll also put timestamps down below in the description if you want to jump around. So yeah, The Marionettes just came out last month. This is my 5th book, and it's the first book in a series. It's a new adult urban fantasy kind of like paranormal book. It's got vampires, witches, all of the characters are in their 20s. And if you want to check it out, if you haven't read the book yet, I'll have all the links down below in the description. You can get it as a paperback pretty much anywhere. You can get the ebook on Amazon, and then it's also available in Kindle Unlimited. There's also an audiobook. So I don't know when this video is going up. I'm filming this on September 1st. So the audiobook right now is just going through the approval process. So the second it's approved, it'll be available. I just don't know when that's going to be yet. The absolute latest that it should go up, I think, is September 9th. So depending on what day you're watching this, it might already be up. I don't know yet. But yeah, you can get the audiobook on Audible, Amazon, iTunes. I absolutely love the narrator and how the audiobook turned out. So definitely check that out if you like audiobooks. I don't even know where to start. What do we talk about first? So how has this release gone? This has been so pleasant. It's been such a good time. I'm so freaking happy with how this release went. I've talked about it before, so it's no surprise this has been my most successful release to date. I've never had a book release go this well, just like in all of the different areas. And going into this release, I really had no idea what to expect. This is my first release in this genre. So this book is very different than my previous books, so I felt like it could go either way. Either people were going to be really excited about this new genre, or a lot of my readers who've enjoyed my previous books aren't going to want to jump to something paranormal when they're used to contemporary from me. That was clearly not an issue this go around. Although I don't necessarily know if that is because my previous readers were excited and willing to read this book, or if I've just brought in a ton of new readers this go around. So we'll get into all of that. So I'm just going to make it down my list of things I wanted to talk about. So arcs of this book. That was something that I did differently this time. I did a lot of things differently with this release. I've been kind of talking about this series as my experimental series. I just wanted to try all new things and just see how it all went, kind of like an experiment. So as far as arcs went, this has been the fewest amount of arcs I've ever sent out for a book in my life. I sent out 24 total copies of this book, 7 of which were just the paperback copies that I sent to Instagrammers who were participating in a tour. I don't really consider those to be arcs because I'm not like expecting them to review the book. That means I only sent out 17 arc copies of this book, the majority of which were just to people on my Patreon page. That wasn't even an intentional like strategic thing with this release necessarily. I just got so like overwhelmed at the end right before this book came out that sending out more arcs, I kind of intended to do that and I just never really got around to it. But I'm not really upset about it. So that was something different. I didn't do a huge arc team this go around. With my first book, The Anti-Virginity Pact, I actually had the book on NetGalley and it was like the #1 most requested book in its category, and it had like hundreds and hundreds of arcs go out. So there was that experience. And then with my next 2 books after that, I did my own arc team, had people apply, went through all of that, sent them out, and I sent out more than with this one, but not as many as the first one. So I've kind of like gradually gone down with the amount of arcs that I've sent out each time. And I have not found that to be an issue whatsoever, mainly thanks to, I'm assuming, you guys who are watching this video, so thank you so freaking much. If you're watching this, if you've already read and reviewed the book just out of the kindness of your own heart, I really, really appreciate that. That really makes a difference for the book, especially during release week. Like, I cannot say thank you enough. As of right now, when we're filming this, we've got 37 reviews on Amazon, which is great, and we have about 111 on Goodreads. I'm considering, again, that I sent out so few early copies. That's like over 100 people who got the book and immediately read it like super quickly. So I'm super flattered and honored and just very grateful that you guys were that excited about the book. The main challenges that I was expecting and that I kind of ran into leading up to release with this book. One, this is the first book in a series, and a longer series, and I've been telling everyone since I wrote this first book, it ends in a cliffhanger. If you don't like cliffhangers, know that. So I kind of knew a lot of people weren't going to want to read this first book until the complete series was out. A lot of readers don't want to start an incomplete series. They'll wait till all of the books come out so they can read them all. So I figured a challenge with this first book was going to be a lot of people are going to wait for the entire series, which means you're going to be waiting for years. But if that's your preference, that's your preference. I also, because this is the first book that I've put into Kindle Unlimited, definitely ran into some people being super happy about that. They were like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited this is in Kindle Unlimited. And some people not being happy about that. They don't like Amazon. They didn't like that decision. So if you've been around for a while, I tried to come up with some workarounds for that. I actually made the ebook available on my Patreon page for a couple of days before release. So anyone who didn't have access to Amazon could get the ebook first, and I did that through BookFunnel. And then I use Ingram Spark for the paperback distribution, so the paperback is pretty much everywhere. So it's not like it's only available on Amazon, but that's still people still had thoughts to share with me about that. Surprisingly, this book has not been mistaken for young adult this go around. That was a major challenge with my previous release. The book was not young adult, and everyone was calling it young adult, and I just like couldn't get it into people's heads that it wasn't young adult, and then people would go into the book and be surprised that it wasn't young adult. So I was kind of preparing for that with this book, because my first book was young adult, and like once you write a young adult book, a lot of the times people just assume all of your books are young adult. I haven't really been into that issue at all with this book. I think people are very much aware that this is new adult. I've said there's some spicy content in here, there's a lot of violence, so I feel like the expectation for this book has been set up a lot more effectively this go around. That hasn't been a challenge at all. Not to say that there aren't different expectations going into the book. I've seen some comments on the book that are always so funny because they're so like contradicting of each other. You'll see one person be like, this book wasn't steamy enough for me. I was really hoping there was going to be more spicy content. Versus the very next person is like, I was shocked by how steamy this book was. So you can't please everyone. I'm always amused with that kind of stuff. Another thing that's been interesting is I had no idea how well the cover was going to be received. I love the cover. I think it's stunning. As far as fitting within its genre goes, this was a risky move on my part. The whole like symbolism cover kind of thing. This is more a trend in traditional publishing instead of self-publishing. Having people on the cover tends to do better in self-publishing. And specifically, this book takes place at an academy, and if you've seen the whole like academy category on Amazon, all of those covers look exactly the same. All of them. I kind of wrestled with myself over that for a while. Actually, I'm a part of a promo right now, a little bit of a plug, with other authors who write new adult, I think some of them might be young adult books that are like academy settings. So if you liked that, or if you just like that category in general, I'll have a link down below. It's just like a landing page and it'll show you all of these similar books. So go look at that and look and see how all of the covers look exactly the same. And then there's mine. So I went back and forth on like, obviously I want it to be immediately recognizable when you see my cover, like what genre it is. And for the most part, you want a cover that looks the same as the other ones in your category, but I still didn't do that. Like I knew logically that's what I should do. I still didn't do it. Academy books, they all look the freaking same. You have a person at the cover. It says something Academy on the front, usually for all of the titles. There's like purple and blue, like neon around them. And they all look the same, and I was like, I don't want a cover that looks exactly the same, because I look at this sea of book covers and none of them stand out to me. They look exactly the same. So I wasn't sure if that was going to work against me or if that was going to make my cover more eye-catching if people are like, that's the only one that doesn't look like that. And yeah, so we'll see how that goes with the series as a whole, but this book has been selling incredibly well and I haven't seen that to be a hurdle. And the overwhelming feedback that I've gotten on this book, every time I post about it, no matter where I post about it, people love the cover and people have been excited about the cover. So that was something I was unsure about going into this release, but I think it's actually gone over pretty well. Okay, so let's talk about pre-orders. Pre-orders. It's hard to get people to pre-order and it's hard to get people to review. That's just like the nature of being an author. Both of them are super helpful to releases. It's hard to convince people to do either of them. I was so blown away by the number of pre-orders that this book got. This book by far had the most pre-orders I've ever seen. I got more pre-orders for this book than I see for the whole sales period of a release week for all of my other books. Like, it was insane. However, I also saw the lowest number of ebook pre-orders I've ever seen on a book. So all of the pre-orders were for paperbacks, and then I also did a thing with the audiobook that's a different subject. So that was interesting for me to see the ebook pre-order number be so low but the paperback pre-order be so high. So I figured that was either because the book was going to be in Kindle Unlimited, so people were waiting for Kindle Unlimited to read it that way, or they just liked the cover and they wanted a physical version. So I got a lot of questions about Kindle Unlimited, so we'll talk about my experience with that so far in a little bit. But that was something I was looking at with this release week to see if those Kindle page reads were up a lot during release week to kind of compensate for those low ebook pre-orders, and that has definitely been the case. So that made sense to me. I've got pre-orders for book 2 up now. I've already seen people pre-ordering book 2 as soon as they finish book 1, so I was really happy to see that. So I guess speaking about book 2, let's just go ahead and we'll do the cover reveal for that one and get that one out of the way. So book 2 is called Wicked Souls. It's coming out December 7th of this year, so just about 3 months after the first book comes out. So you can pre-order the paperback as well as the ebook now. I'll have all the links down below, and without further ado, here's the cover for book 2. I had you guys send in your guesses on Instagram what you thought was going to be on the cover, and it was so interesting to see your guesses. Like, nobody was anywhere near close, but I'm very happy with this cover. It's such a good fit for this book. The blurb for this book I think is now up on Goodreads and Amazon. I wouldn't recommend looking at that if you haven't read the first book though. It's not super spoilery, but it's a little spoilery, so I just wouldn't look at it if I were you. The only other things I'll tell you about book 2, it's a lot darker. I don't know if it's a lot darker. It's darker than book 1, it's steamier than book 1, and it's longer than book 1. Formatted pages, book 1 ended up being 294 pages. I believe at this point, book 2 is going to be anywhere from 350 to 400 pages long. So it's significantly longer than book 1. I'm actually taking a break from it this month. It's with my final beta reader, so I might do like one more draft revision once I get her feedback returned to me. Then we're moving into line edits and everything, so the book is pretty much done. So it's longer, it's darker, it's spicier. And it's a good time. I'm trying to be organized. This is difficult. Interestingly, this is the book of mine that I have invested the least amount of money into. If you want the specifics of that, I have a whole video up about how much I spent on this book. Least amount this individually, but I also bought all of the covers for this series up front, so that was a big investment. But I just feel like I made a lot smarter decisions with my money this go around, and I got the quickest return on that investment with this book. I like to see ideally a return on my investment with my books within the first month of them coming out, and we made all of our money back on this book with the pre-orders alone, which was such relief. I was a little bit stressed by how much money I was putting into this book. So I did the math, and just like on average the number of books that I needed to break even was like 259. The royalty is different depending on ebooks, audiobooks, paperbacks, where you buy it. So that's like an average, but I needed about 259 sales in order to make all of my money back. And do I want to give you numbers? I don't know. I think I might have to in order to do the math for another question later. We've sold about 1,000 copies within this first week of release. If you're wondering, is that usual for you? No. That's a very good book release for me to sell 1,000 copies in a week. I've sold 1,000 copies of my books before, not in the first week. Why is that? I honestly think that's mostly because of TikTok. I've gotten questions on what's been the most successful marketing-wise. TikTok, honestly. I've had a couple of videos blow up over there. It's like a 5-second video, and if it blows up, I'll see 300 pre-orders for the book because of that one video. Like, no other marketing I have ever done has had that kind of impact on my books, and I genuinely enjoy doing it. TikTok is actually like really fun. I was very hesitant to join for the longest time because I'm a little bit older. I felt like I was older, but now that I'm on there's plenty of older people on there, and I was like, I'm not cool enough to do TikTok. I don't know how it works. I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it out. For every one video I have that does really well, you know, I post 20 or 30 that don't, but it's not as time consuming as making a YouTube video, and it has a much better return, and it's just been so easy to find an audience for this book on there, which has been amazing. And it's so much easier to find new people on TikTok because people are just like scrolling through their For You pages, so your videos pop up for people who aren't like subscribed or following you like on YouTube. So I just find like it's so much easier to find new people on TikTok, and people are a lot more willing to watch like a 5-second video versus committing to like a 20-minute long video. So if I had to point to anything as to why this book is doing so well, it's because I've had so many videos on TikTok do well about this book. I'm willing to bet the number of people in my usual audience from YouTube, from my newsletter and everything, the number of people who've picked up this book has been pretty consistent with previous releases. I really think it's new readers that I've brought in, not necessarily more people in my audience are interested. Okay, I still have some more bullet points, but I think I'm gonna answer them with some of the questions that you guys sent in. So we'll jump to your questions, and then if there's anything left, we'll do that at the end. So Thanks for sending in your questions. Did this release motivate you to continue with the series more than you wanted to before? Yes and no. No, because I was already very excited. I have been having so much fun writing this series, more fun than I've had writing books like in a while. I honestly feel like writing this series has kind of like revived my love of writing for me. Not that it was gone, but like this is the most passionate I've been about writing books in a while, since I was like younger, since before I went to college. I wasn't lacking in motivation ahead of time, but having this book come out and obviously having the release go so well and having it be so well received, that's incredibly encouraging, because no matter how much I like this book, there's no like guarantee that other people are gonna like it. So having it sell so well, but then also having the reviews being so overwhelmingly positive, that's really encouraging and really exciting. So of course that like feeds into the excitement that I already had about the series. If the book had been really poorly received, no one bought it, everyone hated it, I'm sure that would have lessened my excitement to keep writing the books. It'd be cool to get just your overall general thoughts and feelings on this release week compared to others. That was some of my bullet points. Okay, so surprisingly, this book release really crept up on me, and it was almost like exhausting and overwhelming coming out of the previous one. So if you haven't been around for a while, my last book came out in March of this year, on like March 30th, the very end of the month. So basically April, May, June, July, end of August. That's still 5 months later, but for whatever reason it felt a lot faster than that. Like I feel like I just had a book release, I just went through all of this. So, and book releases are really taxing and time consuming. There's so many things that you have to do. So honestly, this book release, the whole time I was like, I feel like I just did all of this. I don't know how people put out like 5 or 6 books a year in the indie world and aren't completely burnt out just by everything that goes into doing a book release. I'm having 3 book releases this year, one in March, one in August, and one in December. And already that, it's like they feel back to back to back, even though there's like 4 or 5 months between them. So it really snuck up on me. As you can see, I still have the decorations up from the March release. So I was surprised by how like, I felt like I wasn't ready for another book release. Like the book itself was ready and I had everything done ahead of time. But like emotionally, I was like, dude, we just went through this. This book release has been different. The previous one with the anti-relationship year, I was kind of sad when that book came out. Like I wasn't really ready to let go of those characters. It was kind of bittersweet. I don't have that feeling at all with this book, obviously, because it's the first book in a series, so these characters aren't going anywhere. I'm gonna be stuck with them for a few more years, so I'm excited that I don't have to say goodbye to them yet. However, now that I'm wrapping up book 2 and I've been outlining and starting to plan book 3, I actually wrote a chapter of book 3 last night. I was thinking about it, and I have 4 books planned right now, and I have the first 4 covers, and I'm like, on the one hand, it feels like we just got started because I just published book 1, but I'm also wrapping up book 2. How are we already halfway through this series? So now I'm like, I'm not ready to be halfway through the series. So now I'm doubting, is this going to be longer than 4 books? I have been saying since the beginning it would be at least 4 books. And this original story arc will wrap up in book 4. But the world is set up in such a way where it could be longer if I wanted it to be. We've only had 1 book come out, and already I'm like, I want there to be more books. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I'm not ready to be done with this. So that has just been like amplified by release and me being like, this is so fun. I love seeing other people as invested in this story and these characters as I am. I don't want to be done at 4 books. So I wasn't expecting that with release, but now I'm like, oh my god, we're already halfway through the series. So now I'm already like spiraling and thinking in my head, depending on how book 4 goes, that'll determine whether there's more in the series or not. But even if I end at 4 books, now I'm like, I'd have to write at least a spin-off series. I'd have to keep writing in this world somehow because I'm not ready to let it go. Something that's different with this release that I haven't felt with my previous books, because the previous ones have all been standalones. Even the 2 like connected standalones, still standalones. I feel a lot more pressure with this book and this series, especially now that people have liked the book and are invested and they've pre-ordered book 2 and they've added book 2 to their to-read shelf on Goodreads. There's this pressure that, 1, I don't want to let them down. I hope they love book 2 as much as they loved book 1. Thank God book 2 is already done and I don't have to write it under this pressure. That's why I was rushing to get book 2 done before book 1 came out, so I didn't have to combat that while I was trying to be creative. So like, thank goodness book 2 is pretty much done. So I definitely feel a lot of pressure to make book 2 live up to those expectations. And then also there's this pressure to publish quickly and get the books out there. Like, reader expectations are insane, partially because of Kindle Unlimited, so people are just so used to getting bingeable content. And it used to be, and it still is this way with traditional publishing, you'll wait a year or more between book releases. So here I am putting out the sequel 3 months later, and here I am thinking, that's so fast, like I'm getting these books out, and then I have people like, oh my god, we have to wait so long. Like, I'm like, it's only 3 months. I couldn't write these books faster if I tried. So there's definitely this pressure to put out the books at just like a completely unreasonable rate, and I'm just really unwilling to do that because I don't want the quality to be sacrificed. So book 2 is coming out what I think is quickly after book 1. You gotta wait 3 months, like it's not even that long. But then the gap between book 2 and book 3 is probably gonna be about a year, honestly. We'll see. Haven't started writing it yet, but book 3 is a monster of a book. It's gonna be really long. I'm intimidated by it. I need time. So I haven't experienced that before with my standalones. The pressure to make each book better than the last, not just meet expectations, but you want it to be even better, and then also to get them out in a timely manner, because now people are waiting on it, especially because I left you with the cliffhanger. That's my own fault. That's new. And then also I'm a lot less willing to read reviews for this book. Not for the reasons that you think. Not honestly, having my first book come out, oh, this is a totally different topic, but what's been cool about this book is it's found its audience pretty much right away. You know, your job as a writer isn't to write something that everybody's gonna like, because that's impossible. You'll never write something that fits everyone's tastes, but your job is to write, you know, the book to the best of your ability, and then find your ideal readers, find the people who are gonna be a good fit for your book. So what's been a relief is this book seems to have found those people like right away. There's still been people who don't like it, it happens, but it hasn't struggled to find its readership. My first book, The Anti-Virginity Pact, there were people who liked it when it first came out, but the first group of people who found that book hated it, hated me because of it, were pissed off about that book. So my experience, that release experience, was very hostile and shark infested waters is what it felt like. And now over a year later, that book, I get DMs and private messages like every other day of people who've just found the book and they love it and they relate to it and they went through something similar and they tell me how much the book meant to them. So that book found its audience late. Again, people liked it when it first came out, but a lot of people who read it first hated it. That was a very different release experience, and slowly my ideal readers trickled in, and now I feel like that book has found its audience. And now people who find that book, the majority of them seem to like it. It just found its ideal audience pretty late. This book seems to have found its ideal audience kind of right off the bat. So that's a very different release experience. So the reason why I tell you that, my hesitance to read reviews for this first book isn't like, I don't want to see any negative reviews. Like, give me your worst. I've seen worse. You cannot hurt me now. After that first book release, nothing will surprise me now. Low-key, my advice to new authors, put out your most controversial book first, because that will prepare you for everything to come. Nothing will hurt you after that. So in part, I don't want to read reviews because it's a new book, it's still fresh. I still, you know, I'm a little protective of the book, but also because it's an ongoing series and I'm continuing to write the book, I really don't want anyone else's stuff in my head, anyone else's theories, anyone else's questions, anyone else's expectations of things to come. So on the one hand, like, I want to see people's general reactions. If everyone's saying the same thing and there is like a flaw in this first book, it would be good to know, but I don't want to see the rest of it while I'm still trying to put the series together myself. Like, I don't want to be influenced by what anyone else says, if that makes sense. So I'm avoiding reviews for this one more than I usually do. But on the other hand, I am like really curious, and it is really fun to see people like all excited about the book and like see those kind of reviews. So it's kind of like a catch-22. I'm like, I want to read them, but I don't want to read them, but I want to read them, but I don't want to read them. So that's been different with this release as well. I think that answered that question. This video is gonna be so long. How did you come up with the name Monroe? That's my name, and it's so weird to see it anywhere. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think I know anyone in real life with the name Monroe. Now I do. How did I come up with that name? I don't know. I do not know. I got that question from someone else too about the name Kirby. I genuinely cannot remember at this point where the names come from. I usually search baby name websites and like name lists and stuff, and I compile a list of all the names that I like, and then I'll write like a chapter or two, and I'll try out some different names to see what seems to fit that character's personality. And Monroe is a Monroe through and through. I cannot picture her with any other name. How did you feel about the Storygram Tour? So this is the tour that I did over on Instagram. By the time you're watching this, it might be over. The time I'm filming this, we're about halfway through the tour. So I did a 7-stop tour through them. If you're not familiar with them, there's just an Instagram account, and they host kind of like book tours over on Instagram, obviously. And they work with indie authors like myself, and they also work with like major publishers and everything. So this is my first time using them. It's hard to say because I'm only halfway through the tour at this point. They're giving me results at the end of the tour. They're gonna send me like stuff on how it went, what that's gonna look like. I have no idea, but I sent physical copies to everybody who participated in that. Like I said, I had 7 people, and so far I've really liked it. It's been really cool to see people take pictures of my book. How has it impacted the release? You know, it's hard to tell. Are sales coming from one place or another? So sales have been really consistent throughout the week. So on those specific days, I have no way of knowing, are those sales coming from that TikTok that's still doing well? Are they coming from that tour? Are they coming from my newsletter? Like, I have no way of knowing that. However, during the time that it's been with that tour, so far I've seen a lot more people add it to their to-read shelves on Goodreads. So I don't know how much it's impacted sales, but it seems to have gotten the book on more people's radar at the very least. So I'm happy with it. I'm happy that I did it. You know, I look back, I try new marketing things with every book release, and there's some things that I've tried that I'm like, okay, I'm glad that I tried it, but I wouldn't do it again. This isn't really one of those things. I would probably do it again. I'm liking my experience with it. It seems to be going well. It was a little bit pricey to book the tour, get the books, ship the books, and all of that. You could probably just send them a digital version and they could like Photoshop the cover in there if you wanted to. So it was a little bit more pricey, but yeah, I'm glad that I've done it so far. It has me again in like 5 days when I get the results back from their team. I don't really know. How many books will this series be? Kind of covered that. Definitely 4, probably more. How did Kindle Unlimited impact this release? Are you happy you chose to release through them? So yes, I'm really happy that I decided to try Kindle Unlimited this go around. I had a poetry collection in there previously, so like I've tried them, but never with a release and never with a novel. Like we kind of talked about before, I saw fewer ebook pre-orders this go around, so I was kind of assuming that was because of Kindle Unlimited. As of right now, so Kindle Unlimited pays you per page read. So they come up with a page count for your book based on however the heck they do it. It's like your Kindle normalized page count. So for the Marionettes, that ended up being 349 pages. I don't know how they came up with that number, by the word count, something, I don't know. So there's no way of telling when people borrow the book. They don't tell you when someone's borrowed your book. They just show you the total number of page reads that you've gotten. So there's no way of knowing, did someone read it all the way through? Did they only read the first 10 pages? Did they read half of it? There's no way of knowing exactly how many individual people have been reading the book. You just know the total number of pages. So I've taken the total number of pages, divided it by that total page count, which is 349 pages, and that's my estimate of how many full read-throughs there have been, but again, there's no way of knowing. So far I've seen about 133 full read-throughs in this first week on KU out of, like I said, about 1,000 sales. So that 133 reads combined with the ebook pre-orders that I did see, that is about the number of ebook pre-orders or sales during the first week that I would kind of expect. I'm still surprised that paperbacks have been like 5 times as popular. But also what I've seen with Kindle Unlimited, I like it because I think it allows people to try books that they wouldn't be willing to spend money on. Like they'll take a chance on your book because they don't have to buy it. They can borrow it, read 10 pages. If it's not for them, return it, move on to the next one. It's a lot more risk-free. So I find that people who don't know me, like the people finding me from TikTok or whatever, are more willing to try the book because of Kindle Unlimited, and then if they like it, they'll go on and buy the ebook version so they can keep it, or a paperback version. Obviously not everyone does that, but a lot of people I've seen say that, like, I loved this, had to go buy the physical version. So you technically got the sale twice, and people are more willing to give you a chance because of it. So I do like it. The downside to Kindle Unlimited, you get paid a lot less. So you kind of just have to decide what's more important to you. My focus was, this is the first book in a series, you know, I'm more geared towards building a reader base for this series. I want people to read the whole series. I want people to give it a chance. So getting paid more isn't as important for me with this first book. I just want to bring in as many readers as I can. So for example, with Kindle Unlimited, the amount you get paid, if you don't know how it works, it's different actually every month depending on how many books are in Kindle Unlimited and other factors, because it's basically a pool of all of the people who subscribe to the program, and then depending on how many page reads you got in relation to how many total page reads there were in the program during that period, that's how much you get paid, if that makes sense. So it's usually on average anywhere from 0.004 cents to 0.005 cents per page. So with a book that's 349 pages, that means I would get paid somewhere between $1.40 and $1.75 if someone reads the book all the way through. Comparatively, if you buy the ebook, the royalty on Amazon is $3.44, or if you buy the paperback on Amazon, the royalty is $4.62. So if you read it on Kindle Unlimited, I get paid like less than half of what I would get paid if you bought it. For 133 books that we're assuming through Kindle Unlimited, if people were to buy that many ebooks outright, I'd get paid about $455, but if people read through Kindle Unlimited, I get paid somewhere between $184 and like $230. So you can see it's a big discrepancy. I get paid a lot less. However, I'm perfectly happy with it. It seems to be bringing in new readers. I've seen a lot of people say like, I had no idea what this book was, but I gave it a try and then they love it. So I feel like it's just making this first book in a series a lot more risk-free for people, so people are more willing to try it, and that's my main goal with the book. So I'll get paid less, but I'm okay with that. What have you found works and not works when marketing your books? So it's hard because it's different with every book. I tried some kind of like blog tours and stuff for the last release, and that's something I probably wouldn't do again. I went through a company, they set up the bloggers and everything, and they hosted a giveaway. And yeah, that was just, I really wouldn't do that again. I think we talked about this in another video, kind of how I feel about giveaways and the kind of things that it attracts that are just not really fun to deal with. I didn't really find that to be super successful. I gained a lot of like followers around that time, but again, when there's a giveaway involved, a lot of those people just want to follow you for the giveaway, then they'll unfollow you. So I didn't really find that brought in a lot of like actually interested organic readers. So I didn't really find that to be that successful. I think blog tours used to be a lot more successful, but things are changing. For me now, what's most successful 100% is TikTok. Then obviously I do content marketing here on YouTube. I've got my newsletter list. I do promos like the one that we talked about down below in the description. So social media for me has been the most successful. I've tried paid ads too, and nothing has been more successful to me than word of mouth social media. This video is getting so long. How did you figure out how your vampires work? What were your considerations? So we kind of touched on this in the Q&A video that I did on release day. I have preferences. You know, I read a lot of vampire books. I watch a lot of vampire shows, and everyone's vampires are different. But I have my preferences on like what I think is cool and what I like about vampires. So I basically just kind of like combined all of my favorite versions of vampires, and the one thing that ended up being really different for this series, where there's kind of two kinds of vampires. You have the ones who are born, and then you have the ones who are turned. And the turned vampires actually can't exist without the help of the witches. The witches have to like spell the blood in order to complete the turning process. So the turning vampires are kind of like unnatural. They wouldn't be able to exist on their own. They're a lot more cold and cruel and savage. Like I said, they can't exist without the help of the witches, and then they don't age. And then the born vampires, they age normally. They're a lot more human. So I kind of like having that difference of the two different kinds of vampires in this series. I think that's covered all the questions that you guys sent me in. And the only other things I have in my notes for what I did differently with this release, I had people pre-order signed books. That was new, so I knew exactly the number of signed books that I would need to order. We talked about this in the previous release week wrap-up video for my last book, and I did that. That was pretty successful. I'm still waiting on the books to get here, so there's an update announcement. It's September 1st when I'm filming this, and the tracking info says I should get the books on September 4th. So I think I'm gonna do a live on like September 5th, and we'll sign the books and chat, and then I'll ship them out. And then I also did something similar with audiobooks. I had people like pre-order the audiobooks, and then all of the money from those pre-orders was kind of like a crowdfunding thing in order to pay the narrator, which was awesome because otherwise I wouldn't have made an audiobook right away because I was spending so much money and I just couldn't justify that expense. So I had people like pre-order the audiobooks, they paid for the audiobook, and all of that money went straight into my narrator's pocket, and then I'm gonna send the audiobook to them for free even though they paid for it in order to pay for that. So that was something that worked so well this time around. It made it so much more feasible to make the audiobook right away. So that was great. I think that's everything, and this video is already insanely long and I'm kind of losing my voice. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments down below. Thanks so much for reading if you've already picked up the book. If you haven't and you want to, all the links are down below. You can also pre-order book 2 now. I'm very excited. It's coming out December 7th. I hope you enjoy the book if you pick it up. I'll have the playlist down below in the description if you missed all of the release week content. I put up a video every day of the week, so there's all kinds of stuff about this book if you'd like. But other than that, this video is insanely long. I'm tired of talking. I'll see you guys in my next video very, very soon. Bye. No.
story.